Hello everyone, this is Lerone Kuntz. I'm back. I just want to thank everybody who took the time to leave a comment on the videos that I've been putting up. I want to let you know that I've read every single comment. I hear exactly what you're saying. I appreciate you taking the time to write these comments. I know they are very well thought out. There's been a lot of thought put into these comments, and I really appreciate that. So I'm going to go through a few of your comments to try to respond to them, because I understand that most people don't get to talk to a correction officer, and there's a lot of perceptions out there as to what a correction officer thinks, believes, and what a correction officer does, what his duties are. And I just wanted to let you know that some of the things that people may think is happening is not really happening. Okay, I know that sounds strange. Me, I am a retired New York City correction officer. I worked 20 years in the Department of Correction. I've worked with all different classifications of inmates, from the guy who's the mass murderer to the guy who just jumped the turnstile to get on the train. I've worked in admin. I've worked in, when I mean admin, I mean the administration of facilities. I've been a union representative for one of the largest correction unions in New York State. I am also the author of the book, Correction Officer's Guide to Understanding Inmates, the 44 Keys to Power, Control, and Respect, which some departments use to train their recruits. So what I'm going to talk about, I kind of know something about, okay? So I'm going to try to respond to your questions, or not even your questions, but your comments. And some of these comments are great. Like the one that is the number one comment, because I say it's number one because it got the most thumbs up. And it's from Joe Erlin. It says, but you can't just look at the prison system in isolation. In Norway, we have eliminated homelessness and food insecurity. Education is free. Everyone has full health care coverage. If you've been unemployed for a long time and employers are worried about hiring you, we will pay your salary to reduce the risk. We always want you back on your feet, and we invest in that. You are not alone. It is in that context that you have to view our prison system. We just don't give up. And most of the time, if you fail us, it's because we failed you first. Now, that's a beautiful sentiment. And I think that kind of sums up most of the comments. People want me to understand that your system is in a context, that you have an overall belief that you're executing to make sure that everybody gets treated humanely, not just in the correctional system, but throughout your society. And that's beautiful. And if we could do that here, I'm sure we would. We are a much larger country than Norway, so we have other challenges. We are also a country that accepts people into our country from all over the world. Every year we accept 1 million immigrants legally, and we accept millions illegally. 2022, we accepted 2.7 million illegal immigrants that came to this country. And when they come in, we don't put them on the side in some sort of refugee facility. They are able to come into our country, integrate, use all our services, healthcare, education. They are entitled to everything. So for that reason, we have to make decisions because of the distance of some of our cities, and because we have to allocate resources for different things. So we don't have the resources to do what you guys do. We also don't have the space. Like in Norway, from what I've read, Norway is on a landmass of 148,000 square miles, and you have 5.5 million people. New York, the state that I'm from now, the United States has 50 states, and I'm going to get into some of that too, but we have 50 states. The state where I'm from, New York, is on a landmass of 54,000 square miles, which is about a third of Norway's land mass. But we have 19.8 million people living on 54,000 square miles. In a third of your country, we have 19.8 million people. Now, if your country was as dense as the United States, it would have about 60 million people on your landmass. If you had 60 million people, if you had 10 times as many people on your landmass, that means you would have 10 times as many prisoners, probably. Would you be able to accommodate all of those prisoners? Would you be able to accommodate all the people? Would everybody in your society be able to get free health care, free education, have food security, and all those things? You might be able to do it, but it would be kind of messy, especially if you had influxes of people coming in every year, adding to that. So that's what we're challenged with. So we have decisions to make. We may not have the facility or the resources to provide every inmate with his own room, his own color TV, his own shower, his own toilet, guitar lessons, and things like that. So that's the reality here. It's not that we don't want to do it. One other thing that I see that I want to address in the comments, this is sort of like a common theme that I also saw in the comments, is that punishment issue. The punishment issue seems to be one that people seem to have an issue with. There's one that says the U.S. prison system and recidivism rate is proof that punishment doesn't work. Punishment is bad for the prisoners, but it doesn't reduce crime in any way, quite the contrary. And people have mentioned that going to jail itself, or being convicted of a crime and going to prison, is in and of itself a punishment. And I want to let you know that we believe the same thing. We understand that. And like I said earlier, I'm the author of the book Correction Officer's Guide to Understanding Inmates, the 44 Keys to Power, Control, and Respect, On page 14, I have written in my book, and like I said, my book is used in correctional academies to train some of the recruits. In my book on page 14, it says correction officers serve as part of a criminal justice system. Some correction officers mistakenly believe that punishment is part of their job. It is not. The judge and jury punish criminals by sending them to jail. Jail is the punishment. Society has determined that jail in and of itself is a suitable punishment for committing crime. And at the end of the next paragraph, I say, you are not required to further punish the inmates that are in your custody for crimes they have committed on the outside. So don't burden yourself with that responsibility. So that's a constant theme in correction. I didn't invent this. This is what I was trained when I came on the job. See, what is happening in a lot of cases is people really don't know what goes on in prison, so they have their own idea of what's happening. Okay? And they see 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there of some brutal incident that's happening, and they say, well, that's what's happening. And here in America, we have an excellent movie production apparatus. They call it Hollywood, and Hollywood goes all over the world. And so they depict us correction officers in a certain light, and that's what people think. Now, another theme is that, well, the correction officers in the United States are not trained well enough. They need more education. And I don't have a dispute with that, because education is good. The more education, the better. But I would like to say a lot of things that cause issues in jail, education can't solve. Okay? A lot of us do have education. Right now, in where I used to be a correction officer, it's required that you have 2 years of college. Now, not every jurisdiction is like that. And like I wanted to say about the states, there are 50 states here. Each state has its own rules, its own requirements, its own system, right? So to look at the United States and try to categorize it as one way or the other without acknowledging that there's a lot of different things happening in this country is kind of not the reality, okay? And also, why I'm on this subject, the death penalty. Most of the states here don't have the death penalty, and even states that do have the death penalty, they don't use it. Like, I'm from New York. I don't ever remember an inmate from New York being executed. I personally had to watch Julio Gonzalez. I was assigned to work with him one-on-one while he was in my facility. Julio Gonzalez is the man that killed 87 people in New York City.
An unemployed Cuban immigrant is charged tonight with the worst mass murder in U.S. history. He allegedly torched the Happy Land Social Club in the Bronx.
He never got the death penalty. Matter of fact, he died in jail. He never got the death penalty, right? I don't think they ever charged him with the death penalty. And everybody knows John Lennon, right? John Lennon was killed in New York. They have the death penalty in New York. Let me remind you, they have the death penalty in New York. The man who killed John Lennon, you know John Lennon from the Beatles. The guy who killed him is still in jail, from what I understand. Didn't get the death penalty. So it's not like everybody gets the death penalty here, that we're just lining people up and giving them the death penalty. Most people that commit murder in the United States do not get the death penalty. Okay, and what I was going to say about education. Education is fine, but what is the issue is the amount of people that we have in our system, and how do you maintain a system that's large as ours. And we have, like I said, dense cities, so we have to have people living in close proximity to each other. So let's take this for example. Say in Norway, in Bastøy prison, right? You got 115 inmates, you have 4 officers. Say if someone pulls up with a bus of 300 prisoners to that facility. Now where you have one inmate in a cell, he has his own television, he has his own bathroom, his own shower, he has everything to himself. Now imagine 4 people have to be housed in that room. Would you still have the same calm, relaxed facility? Would there not be any arguments between these 4 guys that are living in this facility, or these 400 guys that are living in the facility that was built for 115? Yeah, you probably would. Would you leave the knives around for them to, use every day? You probably wouldn't. So that's what we're facing. It's not that we are trying to make a system that is brutal. It's just that logistically, and as far as resources are concerned, we have decisions to make. So are our prisoners the priority when we have children that are homeless? We have people that are coming from other countries that have children that we have to educate in our school systems that may not even understand English, and we have to train them for English, even though we just have money allocated for our own kids. We have to make these decisions in this country. This is America. This is our creed. There's a Statue of Liberty that is in New York, and at the base of the Statue of Liberty, it says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuge of your teeming shores. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." We're actually trying to do that. We actually let anybody come here and make a life. Okay? Not a lot of countries do that. So we are a benevolent people, and we are not trying to make everybody's lives worse because we have prisoners that we mistreat and we send them back out into society. That's not how we are doing this. In terms of the education, when I want to get back to that. Now, you could be educated, you could have a PhD in sociology or social work, right? Come into a facility and work with prisoners, and you know what? Everything goes fine as long as the prisoners want to cooperate with you. When they say they're not going to do it, then what are you going to do? Let me give you an example. You might have a prisoner, which we've had, a guy that just doesn't want to go to court. Everybody's waiting for him. The judge is waiting for him. The jury's waiting for him. The prosecutor, the witnesses, everybody's there at court. We have him at the jail telling him, you have to go. And he's saying, I don't want to go. Now, you could be as educated as you want to be, but that doesn't get that guy on the bus. So what are we supposed to do? Just sit around and talk to him all day and just try to persuade him? When the clock is ticking, court starts at 8:30. We have to get him there. So what do? We get him there. Okay, that's the reality. 11 o'clock at night, everybody has to go in their cells. If a person doesn't want to go in the cell, what do? We just talk to him. We call a social worker and we try to figure out why he doesn't want to go to jail. Doesn't want to go in the cell. When we have 300, 400 inmates in this facility, no, we have to put him in a cell. So that's what you see a lot of times when you do see the footage. It's not that we're there to punish them further, but we have to have order, and somebody has to be in charge of making that happen, and that's where we come in. Everybody that is not in any branch of law enforcement has a hard time understanding this, and before I got into law enforcement, I had a hard time understanding this. But the reality is, even if you're working at the local McDonald's and you're working security and you ask someone to do something and they tell you no, you're going to feel some kind of way about that. You know, it's going to go beyond your education and what you think that you will do when someone is actually defying your authority. Yeah, you can talk to them to a point, but at some point it may get to a point where you have to take action. It's just the way it is. For example, we get prisoners that have sexually assaulted someone. And then the court says, this person, we need to have a DNA test of this person, right? We have the court order signed by a judge, and we go to the person and say, hey, the judge has this order that you have to be DNA tested, so we have to have the medical examiner take your blood. And you know what? The guy will say, no, I'm not doing that. And you can talk to him till you're blue in the face. You can call every doctor, PhD you want to call. And they'll tell you, kiss my behind, I'm not doing that. But what do you do then? See, that's what the reality is. So we have to hold him and allow the medical examiner to take his blood. That's how it happens, unfortunately. That's what we're charged to do, and we do it. So if you see a video when a 2-second clip or a 2-minute clip and you think you know the story, there may be a story behind that. Now, I'm not saying there's some officers that come into the system that have some bad intent, but we try to weed them out, right? I was a union representative. I've seen plenty of people lose their jobs. I've seen plenty of people get indicted, arrested, charged, and go to jail for things that they've done that were against the rules. So we have rules, we have a constitution. Fifth Amendment forbids cruel and unusual punishment. It's always been like that. So it's not that we don't get it, we do. Another thing that I want to say that is important, and it's personal to me, because all right, let me just give an example. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I was born in Bedford-Stuyvesant. My family moved to Brownsville, Brooklyn. All right, I know that may not mean anything to you, but I'll make it plain in a minute. If you look at where the inmates come from that my jail and my system covers, the majority of the inmates come from East New York, Brownsville, where I'm from, Bed-Stuy, where I'm from. Okay, so what I'm saying is that we are from the same community. We know each other. We speak the same language. We grew up under the same conditions. We played on the same playgrounds. We're not trying to hurt these people, but we also know the people that they've hurt. Okay, so we have a obligation to make the system work for everybody, and we're not there to punish them, But we have to have order, okay? And most of our facilities are overcrowded and understaffed. It's not unusual for a correction officer to work 16 hours for 4 days and on the 5th day work 8 or 12 hours, okay? So we're doing this job and it's not easy. Like I said, we know the people that, or we know a lot of the people that we are supervising in jail and in prison. I've had people that I know their whole family, I know their mother, I know their father, I know their uncles, sisters, and everything. I've ate at their table and they are my prisoners at some point. So am I there to abuse them and make them bitter and angry so I can send them back into the community? No. But if he has to go to court, he has to go to court. If he has to lock in, he has to lock in. And if he has to give DNA, he has to give DNA. And we're the last person standing on the totem pole to make that happen. So keep that in mind. So that's what we're trying to do. I had a guy in my facility that I went to school with, grew up with, killed 5 people. You know him personally. So I understand what you're saying. Keep the comments coming. I respect your comments, and periodically I want to come out here and I want to read some of your comments, and I want to give you a little insight on what it is that we do so we all can, understand each other. There's one other one that is a common theme of the comments, and it's a beautiful comment, and it says, if you want them to stay out of prison, you have to rehabilitate them and treat them like humans. That's a common theme. And then there's another person that said, if you treat the inmates like animals, that's what will come out and you'll have gained nothing. And that's true. But what I want to say is that we got that. We understand that. And as we train these officers, this is how we're training them. And most people who stay as long as I stayed, 20 years, we understand that. A lot of people come in and they don't get it. They stay a couple of years and they leave. But those of us who stand the test of time, we get it. A lot of inmates come into the system and they say they have never been to the doctor until they came to jail. Some inmates, if I had $1 for every time an inmate has told me, if I wouldn't have came to jail, I would have been dead by now. This jail saved me. They got drug treatment. They got medical treatment. They were able to reunite with their families because they were sober enough, or we encouraged them enough to call their mother and call their children. All right, so we are in some respects part of their family. Sometimes we are their family because their family has already given up on them because they've done so many things to their own family that they don't even bother anymore. So we're their family, and that's one of the reasons why they come back, because they feel like they have a place with us. But that's not the intention. We want them to go home and we want them to have a better life. We want them to learn a few things if we can teach them. When I see inmates on the street that were in my custody, they're happy to see me. And they want to tell me how good they're doing, what they're doing. They want to tell me about their kids. They want to tell me that they got a job. This is the type of relationship that we have with these inmates. So don't be misled by Hollywood and the 2-minute news clip that you see. Now, just like Michael Moore did in his movie, he talked about how it is in America. Then he shows like one of the worst scenes from a jail, probably from 1970, where they're dragging people on the floor and they're sicking dogs on them. That's what they want to show. That's what they want you to think. Just like he showed those images, he could have shown this image.
Dramatic video from Lake County Jail shows how 2 correctional officers saved an inmate's life. Take a look at this. It happened on Monday around noon. The officers were escorting an inmate back to his cell when he threw himself over a railing, trying to fall to the floor below. There you see him as it goes down. One of the officers grabbed him while the other officer ran to help. Together, they pulled that 28-year-old man back to safety. get this, he was not hurt, is now being monitored to prevent any self-harm. Officers Garrett Parcell, Matthew Belavia are being praised for their quick actions. Lake County Sheriff says, quote, "They are heroes in my book."
So that's the reality of what we do. And I welcome your questions. I know it is very hard to talk to a correction officer. Believe me, I understand that. It took 2 weeks for me to convince my wife that I was a correction officer. She wouldn't believe me, all right? And we've been married 30 years, but when we first met, it took 2 weeks for her to believe that I am a correction officer. So yeah, and I am probably the normal correction officer. We all feel like this, all right? Most of us who have time on the job, we understand, okay? So we are doing the best we can, and I love showing videos from Norway to people that are in the system here in the United States, to show them that, hey man, maybe we'll get here one day. It works, you know, it works. They're doing it, they're making it happen. This is an example. This is what right looks like. But until we get there, you know, try to understand that it's not that we're trying to punish these guys and brutalize these guys and all these other things. Most of the time is spent keeping them from hurting each other. That's the main focus that we have. Keep them from hurting each other, okay? And that's the reality. So if you have any other questions, please put them in the comments. Thank you once again for taking the time to leave the comments. I know that they're very well thought out and they're from the right place, and that's where I'm receiving it from. I'm accepting it the way you are presenting it. I'm taking it the same way, with the same feeling that you are sending it to try to help, and I really appreciate that. So until next time, as always, peace and stay safe.